In this video, I want to calculate the X and Y cutter center locations for the 3/4 inch end mill as it follows the red path. This path has the cutter rolling into the cut with a clockwise arc, which will help to evenly load the cutting forces onto the cutter, unlike our last facing toolpath. It will also ensure that the chips are formed thick to thin and thereby reduce the chance of chatter. The step over is approximately 70% of the cutter at 1/2 inch. To calculate the location of the center of the cutter at the start position, we need to work from the part 0. The blue outline represents the raw material size, which has a 1/16 of material to be removed from each end. The 1/2 inch radius used to arc the cutter into the material ends where the raw material begins. This puts the X value at -1/16 minus the 1/2 inch radius, which equals -0.5625. Since we want the cutter to remove a 1/2 inch of material, the Y value will be -0.125 at the end of the arc, and the Y value at the start position will be -0.125 minus the 1/2 inch radius, which equals -0.625. At position 2, the X value will be -1/16 of the extra raw material, and the Y will be -0.125. At position 3, the Y will be the same as position 2, -0.125. The X will be the 2.0625, the length of the raw material past the X0, minus the 1/2 inch arc, which makes the X position 1.5625. At position 4, the cutter is at X 2.0625, the length of the raw material past the X0, and the Y is the -0.125 it was at, minus the 0.5 arc radius, making the Y value -0.625. At position 5, the X is the same as position 4, 2.0625. To calculate the Y position, we need to start from the bottom of the part at -1.5. The Y at position 6 will be -1.5 plus 1/8, which equals -1.375. This will have the cutter removing a 1/2 inch of material as it moves from position 6 to 7. The Y at position 5 will be a 1/2 inch closer to Y0, making it -0.875. At position 6, the X is the same as position 3, 1.5625, and the Y, as we already calculated, is 1.375. To move the cutter from position 6 to 7, the Y value will remain at -1.375. To ensure the cutter cleans up the corner of the workpiece, I'll make the X 0.1875, which will take the cutter edge 1/8 past the raw material. At position 8, the X coordinate will be the same as 7, 0.1875. Since there is now a 1/2 inch wide strip of material remaining in the middle of my part, I do not want the cutter centered on it for the last cut, as this is the worst possible position for the cutter. I do want the cutter to overlap both of the previous passes, so no thin wall of material will remain on the surface. And to ensure the creation of a thick to thin chip, I will place the cutter above the center of the remaining material, while still maintaining an overlap of the first two cuts. Placing the cutter at -0.6875, a 1/16 above the center, will accomplish this. Now the cutter can be fed off the part so that the edge of the cutter is 100 thou past the raw material. The Y position of the cutter will remain at -0.6875. The X will be 2.0625, the raw material length past X0 plus the 100 thou plus the cutter radius of 3/8, which equals 2.5375. Now that I have calculated all of the cutter positions, in the next video I will add these values to the G&M code.